Good morning, everybody. This is Jackie Green from the Chatham County Council on Aging, and we are so glad that you decided to join us today. So we have a special presentation by the Community Emergency Response Team called CERT, and it's on emergency preparedness. And we'd like to welcome Andy Fauci here. He's with us today, and he is the Chatham CERT Chief of Staff. So welcome, Andy, and you can go right ahead.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Howdy, folks. Again, my name is Andy Fauci. I'm with Chatham CERT, the Community Emergency Response Team. We're a group of volunteers that go around and do training as well as respond to emergencies.
Chatham CERT Chief of Staff.
Whoop, we've got some echo.
Andy, and hold on just a minute. Let me fix that. Right ahead. I got to find it on my screen here.
Hear me all right?
Yes. Bear with me just a minute.
Excellent. Howdy, folks. Again, my name is Andy Fauci. I'm with Chatham CERT.
And it's somewhere and I can't find it.
Volunteers.
Welcome to my world.
Training as well as respond to emergencies.
Well,
like everybody else, I just hate the sound of my own voice. I can't tell you how much I hope you can mute that.
I am trying. I can always block out. I can always cut the recording off too. I just can't figure out where it is. Just a minute. Found it. All right, Andy, you're up.
Okay, we'll try this again. All righty. Well, today's presentation is on emergency preparedness. In other words, we're going to go for preparing for a hurricane. I just hate the sound of my own voice. Uh-oh.
Yes.
Really bad echo still. You got it? I'm going to assume that she does since she had to mute herself. So, okay. We're going to be talking about building a kit and making a plan and staying informed. Before we do, though, I'd like to go ahead and talk about who our sponsoring agency is. CERT programs have to have a local sponsoring agent, and our agency is the Chatham County Emergency Management. They work to protect residents and visitors of Chatham County through a comprehensive emergency management program where they try to mitigate and prepare and respond to all sorts of emergencies and incidents. And they also can help coordinate recovery using local, state, and federal partners and resources. Now, the Chatham County CERT, that's who I'm with, we deliver education and training for Chatham County residents on emergency and disaster preparedness. And when we're activated, we support, to the extent of our training, Chatham County Emergency Response under the direction of Chatham County Emergency Management and local incident commanders. If you have any questions about possibly joining us or other presentations we can give, you can get a hold of us at our website or send us an email at info@chathamcert.org or contact the Council on Aging and get a copy of this presentation, and our contact information is there. Now, real quick, the agenda is we're going to talk about a warning, why we need to prepare. Then we're going to talk about building a kit, making a plan, and staying informed. And I like to offer the reminder that we really do always want to plan ahead. After all, it wasn't raining when Noah built the ark. You know, it started raining after he finished. So kind of a different outcome if he had built it once the raindrops started. I'd also like to remind everybody, turn around and don't drown. Doesn't matter if you're a driver or a passenger in a car, make sure that vehicle does not go through moving water. It only takes 6 inches of fast-moving water to knock over and carry away a full-size adult. It takes only a foot of water to move away, take away a small car, and only 18 to 24 inches to take away a large SUV or big truck. And not only that, but you never know how deep the water is. You might just wind up having to swim away from your vehicle. Now, there was a 30-year study spanning 1970 to 1999 in which they recorded 600 deaths related to hurricanes. Now, prior to this study, it was believed that 90% of those deaths were from storm surge. But in reality, only 6 of those deaths were actually due to the storm surge. So it's only 1%. In reality, 59%, or nearly 2 in every 3, were drowned due to inland flooding, which is the kind of waters you'll find around our homes and around Pittsburgh. So walking and driving into floodwaters was the most prevalent cause of death. So whether you're driving or a passenger, don't let that vehicle go through standing water or running water. You don't want to be a statistic. All right, next, for those of you on the phone, I'm going to describe this slide because to me it's really, really interesting. There are 2 pictures on it. The first one on the left shows a very large, very well-formed hurricane, and there's a red X almost in the middle of it, and that's Chatham County. The other picture, the one on the right, shows the storms that have hit the eastern seaboard over the last 80 to 100 years, and nearly every single one of them have passed right over North Carolina. We are actually ranked the 4th most common state to be hit by hurricanes and any kind of cyclonic storm. Tropical Storm Andreas formed this year in the eastern Pacific Ocean on May 9th, becoming the earliest named storm on record to develop in the eastern Pacific Ocean. And 2021 was the 7th consecutive Atlantic hurricane season to feature a storm before June 1. In fact, next year, the NOAA will be starting hurricane season not on June 1st, which is the traditional date, but on May 15th. So because of global warming, they're actually having to extend the hurricane season. All right. What else could happen in addition to a hurricane? Because what you do today, what you do next week to prepare for a hurricane can actually help with any kind of an emergency. So it can help to prepare you for ice and snow, floods. We had the gas pipeline interruption recently, pandemics. I mean, just think about how hard it was to find toilet paper this time last year. So if we prepare and we have those kinds of materials, it'll not just help us with hurricanes. Hurricanes are just the most common things to impact us here in North Carolina. Now, what do we need if any of these things happen? Well, we need the usual: water, food, first aid, shelter, heating and cooling. We need to be able to communicate with other people. We need to have security, whatever it may be. Each of our needs are a little bit different. My mother-in-law also needs power for her CPAP machine. I have a friend who needs power for an oxygen concentrator. So everybody has different needs. So we need to make our own lists and figure it out. Now, while coming up with these lists, we need to remember the rule of 3s. You can survive 3 minutes without air. In a typical emergency, you can only survive 3 hours without shelter. You can survive 3 days without water, and you can go 3 weeks without food on average. So whenever you're preparing for an emergency, remember to think through what you need and remember those rules of 3. 3 minutes without air, 3 hours without shelter, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks without food. Now, the next few slides are very graphic, and I'm going to go ahead and describe these for the folks on the phone. What we're looking at now is a picture of the streets of San Juan, Puerto Rico, after Hurricane Maria hit in 2017. The hurricane was so strong in this area where the photo was taken, there's actually very little storm damage on the streets, but they're still completely blocked because it's not the usual branches and such that are down, but their entire power infrastructure. Power lines, power poles, all their telephone and internet lines, roads completely blocked all over Puerto Rico. The next one is from Hurricane Matthew in October of 2016. This is in Lumberton, where we see a bunch of emergency workers where they've pulled up a boat and rescued a gentleman. All he was able to take, he's barefoot, he's got a t-shirt, shorts, he's just got a cat carrier, and some cat food. That's all he was able to get out with. So we need to prepare to make sure we can get out with what we need. Another slide, another reason why we need to prepare is this is a photograph of Columbia, South Carolina point of distribution in October of 2015. A point of distribution is where you go if you don't have life-saving materials. In North Carolina, we typically hand out water, meals ready to eat, and we may hand out tarps. We do not typically hand out ice in the state of North Carolina because of the logistics problems with it. But you really want to try to have these materials on hand yourself rather than rely on going to these points of distribution. You may get stuck in a long line. Whoever's car it is may run out of fuel or use up fuel that you need for other things like doctor's appointments. And they may even not have the materials you need when you get to the front of the line. Now, the last photograph I'm showing, this is a picture of a residence on the North Carolina coast after Hurricane Matthew, again in 2016. The house itself does not show much damage, if any. In fact, everything on the porch is still just sitting there in place. But in front of it, there's all the furniture. There's the sofa, the desks. There are a couple of mattresses. There's even what looks like some suitcases. That means the inside of this home is not livable because if water got in to damage the furniture, that means it got in to damage the walls. There's going to be mold and mildew within a matter of just a few days. And it may be years before this home can be occupied again. So again, we need to prepare. Now, in preparation, everyone has a role. The government has a role to, like the Emergency Management Office here in Chatham County, they plan for emergencies. They work with law enforcement, fire and rescue, and other first responders. They work with public works and health and human services so that everyone has the best chance of not only survival, but getting life back to normal. In the private sector, of course, we have the critical infrastructure like our utilities, our roads, public transportation, grocery stores. Did you know that the average grocery store only keeps 3 days worth of food on hand on an average day? And if there's an emergency, of course, that's going to disappear even faster. So folks like Food Lion and the other stores, they have emergency operations themselves, and they can roll them out to get food out faster and to provide at least the basic goods to their stores. Now, there's also non-government organizations or NGOs. They can provide shelter like the Red Cross shelters. They can provide emergency food supplies like the pods, the point of distribution we talked about a minute ago. But today, we're really concentrating on individuals and communities. And what we can do is we can, number one, reduce hazards around our home. So when a storm comes, take those materials that you have outside, the chairs, the tables, clotheslines and such, stack them up and tie them down. Make sure they don't blow around. Make sure they don't damage your home, making your home unlivable. You can prepare emergency kits and emergency plans, monitor emergency communications. You can volunteer. You may not be able to wield a chainsaw, but a lot of people can sit down and answer phones and answer questions when folks call in. And you can participate in community emergency response activities, whether they be through your church, whether they be through a group like CERT or the Red Cross. Now, what can you do? Number one thing that you and I can do is if it's an emergency, you call 911. In fact, you know those little stickers that they can put on the phone that say call 911? The reason for those is you would not believe how many people forget the telephone number for 911 in an actual emergency. When our fight or flight adrenaline gets going in our bodies, all sorts of information just right out of our brains. So it won't hurt if you want to have a sticker, 911, sticker for your neighbor's telephone number and all that sitting on your phone. But the idea is to try not to even be a victim. Don't forget, our emergency responders are set up to respond and take care of us on an average day, which means only a few of us need assistance. But in a major incident like a hurricane, we don't want to be a victim because we don't want to wait on the police. We don't want to be an additional burden on fire and rescue. So number one is build a kit. Number two, make a plan, know what to do. And three, be informed. Get information so you know what's going on. Contact your friends and loved ones so they know what's going on. where you're going if you're going to evacuate, and that sort of thing. And be prepared to help your neighbors if you can. Support first responders. When we have had hurricanes and such knock trees down in our neighborhood, the trees are off to the side long before first responders can get here, because I'm in a rural neighborhood and we have a lot of neighbors that have chainsaws. I'm not one of them. I'm not really good with my hands in that way, so I try to help in other ways. Try to provide immediate assistance to victims if you can, but most importantly is encourage others to prepare, because again, the more our neighbors need help, the longer it's going to take to get help to everyone that needs it, because first responders will just be overwhelmed. Now, when you build a kit and make a plan, one of the things you do not want to do is to just plan on going to a shelter unless you can't avoid it. There's a picture on the screen now. This is Garner High School for Hurricane Florence in 2018. The cots are right next to each other. So, I mean, they're designed for maximum occupancy. They're not designed for comfort. Privacy, you can just count on having zero privacy. Personal items, you can't secure them very well. So you need to plan on having them on your person or secured at home and hope they're still safe when you get home. Only the very basic needs are going to be met at a shelter. By all means, go to one if you need to, but try to avoid it if you can, because all you're going to get is a cot, a pillow, a single blanket, and 3 simple meals a day. I have assisted at a shelter. The meals are pretty good. They do come hot, but they don't stay hot for very long because they're not prepared on site. Entertainment is rarely, if ever, provided. And pets, you really can't count on pets being allowed at shelters. And even if you can take an animal to a shelter, they are not taken into where your cot is. They are kept in cages in a separate area. You're responsible for exercising them. You're responsible for making sure they get fed. The food that is provided there by the shelter is whatever has been donated, so it may not and is unlikely to be the type of food your pet is accustomed to. So when you prepare a kit, make sure you take that into account if you do go to a shelter. Now, why would you want to go to a shelter? Well, number one, if you live alone or the folks in your home like you need support, need help, then by all means, go to a shelter. But plan on being able to communicate what help you need when you get there and have whatever you can with you to make giving you that assistance that much easier. And if an area evacuation is required, then by all means go to a shelter. But I do want to pass on this secret to you. Shelters are intended for short term. As soon as a shelter is opened, sometimes before they're opened, the sponsoring agency is already looking at getting them closed. They're already looking at how they're going to get everybody out of that shelter and get the shelter closed. Now, we talked about building a kit earlier. What kinds of things do you want in that kit? Well, first and foremost, you need water and food. It used to be that FEMA would recommend 3 days. Whoops, sounds like my dad's old hearing aid. But you build a kit with water and food. Now FEMA is recommending 2 weeks supply of each. Spare eyeglasses, medical supplies, your oxygen concentrator, your CPAP and power supplies for those, whatever you can. These are the things you need to supply. Those of you who are looking at the screen, you see a list in white and red, and these red items I'm going to read to you because those are the ones that you not only need at home, but also if you go to a county shelter. So a minimum of 3-day supply of medicines and batteries, preferably a 2-week supply. Any supplies for any animals you may bring, your own toiletries, your own clothing, any other personal hygiene items that you need, books, board games, and other things to entertain. Now, for those of us who are on a computer, we're looking at the photograph of a simple cabinet. This is out in a friend of mine's garage. This is where he keeps it. His garage is heated, but it's not cooled, so he's got things out there that can withstand heat, but not cold, like canned goods and bottled water. If you notice, those of us who can see the picture, a lot of these items are everyday items that as these shelved items in the photograph reach their use by or expiration date, he can rotate them inside and bring out newer items to replenish, because you need to make sure that everything in your emergency kit is still good. Batteries haven't leaked or burst. Cans haven't distended and are still within a good use date. Your water, that sort of thing. Whatever you need, just check it 2 or 3 times a year and make sure that it's all good to go. As you can see, he has 2 large packs of toilet paper. Believe it or not, this was before the pandemic that he took this photograph. So he was prepared when the pandemic hit and none of us could get toilet paper. Now, since we're on the topic of building a kit and evacuation, I want to talk about the 6 P's of evacuation, or as they say in the military, proper preparation prevents piss poor performance. These are the 6 categories that you need to remember in the event you need to evacuate, or just building your kit in general. And that is people and pets. Anything you need on a daily basis, you need to have in your kit. Papers, phone numbers, important documents like your insurance information. If you come home and your home is gone, your files are going to be gone. So make sure you have those. Any prescriptions. I'm practically blind without my glasses, so I always keep my old one around, and that's in my kit. My vitamins, whatever else you need, like CPAP. Pictures, any irreplaceable memorabilia. One of the first things my brother and I did when my parents passed was we made digital copies of our family photo albums that they had. So that even if we have to evacuate our homes, even if our homes are destroyed by fire, those files, our family history, including my dad's military records and everything, have been scanned in and are up on the internet so we can recover them no matter where we go. Personal computers, important files and passwords, plastic. That includes credit cards, ATM cards, and cash. So these are the 6 categories you need to keep in mind whenever you're building a list. And I do also want to go back one, if I can get my computer to behave. There we go. One of the things I want to remind you on building a kit and preparing all your food, this does not have to be expensive. It does not have to be expensive at all. If you, on your weekly grocery trip, pick up one extra item that goes into this kit, it doesn't have to be much. A single box of oatmeal or grits or something like that can cost you maybe $3, but it's got 10 or 12 servings in it. And while it may not be something you'd enjoy for 8 or 10 meals in a row, it's something that has a long shelf life and will stay good for a very long time. You just have to have a way of heating up some water so that you can make it. Again, it doesn't have to be expensive, and you don't have to have it all tomorrow. You just need to start building it as soon as you can so it's there and ready when you need it. Now, let's talk about making a plan. Jackie with the Council on Aging told me that she's already sent out this hurricane power outage checklist. This is a fairly long checklist, several pages in length. And what it allows you to do is to go through a list, and it helps you what to do 7 days out before a hurricane, what to do 5 days out, 3 days out, what to do during the hurricane and immediately following it. So this is a step-by-step guide that the Council on Aging can get you a copy of. But make a plan not only for hurricanes, but also for communications. Who do you need to call regarding, hey, if I need to evacuate, can I count on you? Hey, if I can't get to the grocery store and the power is out, will you check on me because my phone won't work? That sort of thing. What are your medical needs? What needs do your pets or service animals have? Who are you going to call if you cannot get a hold of local relatives or friends? Is there somebody out of state you can try to reach and you all know to coordinate through that person? These are the types of plans that you need to make. They don't have to be lengthy. Just write them down and review them every so often, a couple times a year. That way you know where the plan is. And by the way, keep these in a Ziploc baggie. That way, if things in your house get wet, your plans are there and you can refer to them when you need. Speaking of planning, how about a personal wellness plan? So that involves, of course, a first aid kit, your medication management. If you can, try to keep some extra medication or get some extra just before a hurricane hits. And if it needs to stay cool, how are you going to do that? What type of your durable equipment? We keep talking about insulin pumps, sleep apnea, CPAPs, and O2 tanks. Documentation, healthcare directives, medication lists. Make it possible for you to return to normal life as quickly as possible, even if you don't go back to your normal residence. And here are some items that can help you with that. If you can afford a generator, I'm not mechanically inclined. I've got a big generator that looks like the picture on the screen, but I have neighbors who are very mechanically inclined, and I have an arrangement with them so that I can use my own generator for a couple hours in the morning and a couple hours in the afternoon. They come by and pick it up and take it to other neighbors and plug it in for those other neighbors so those other neighbors can have electricity for a few hours a day. Each neighbor has to provide their own gas. And my neighbors who are mechanically inclined, they keep it up and running. They remind me at the end of every season, did I put stable in the gas so it'll last 2 years instead of 6 months? You can also get little radios, handheld radios that either have a solar panel on them and you leave them in a window so they're always charged, or have a crank or you put batteries in them. Some of them even have flashlights attached to them and allow you to charge cell phones. There's all kinds of things. One of my favorite purchases for emergencies was a little square refrigerator that I can plug into my car and it will keep whatever I need cold. I also have a full-size ice chest, but that little guy is perfect for any medication. I've got a cat that's on medication, and her medication goes into that refrigerator. But remember, if you have one of these, it can take 12 hours to cool down. So you need to get it cool before the hurricane or other emergency hits, so you can just transfer stuff right into it and you're good. Or use something like those little blue ice packs until it cools down on its own. Third step is to be informed. Again, make a plan ahead of time so you're informed of what decisions you know to make. Know where to get accurate news and updates. There's something that everybody here on this call should be aware of, and it's called Alert Chatham. Now, Alert Chatham is fabulous. It is a reverse call system I'll tell you about in just a moment. But know which local news stations and where they are on your radio dial, or if you have a battery-operated TV or TV in your vehicle, know how to tune into that radio or TV station. Reliable websites like readychatham.org, or if you're on Facebook and Twitter, you can get a hold of the Chatham 911 through their Facebook page, and Chatham County has a Twitter page. They talk about road conditions, where they need volunteers and that sort of thing. And of course, the NOAA weather radio, they will provide information for you that you need in a very timely manner. Again, have important phone numbers written down, know where your meeting places are. If your home is damaged, whether by fire or a hurricane, do you know to meet out front or meet out back? Because if you are standing in the wrong place, people have run into the home to rescue somebody and died when that person was actually safe and just standing on the other side of the home. So make sure you've talked with your loved ones about where you want to meet. Have an out-of-state contact, of course, and keep a charged cell phone, or know where you can use a landline in case yours goes out. Now, today, what can we do today? We can build a kit, make a plan, and stay informed. That's what we've been talking about. But the important thing is register for Alert Chatham. It's what's called a code red service. It acts as a reverse 911 call system, and it can make up to 60,000 automated phone calls per hour to Chatham County residents. It can notify you that there's severe weather in the area, that you need to take shelter. It can alert you that there's another type of emergency, say a chemical spill or something, and you don't have to wait for the 6 o'clock news to find out. It will let you know immediately. Also, always be aware of your surroundings and keep an eye on the weather. What to do now is ask for help. You're not in this alone. You can seek assistance from family and friends, the Council on Aging, emergency management itself, and the faith-based community. In fact, the emergency management, you can talk to them about their emergency evacuation list. It would not be my first choice, but if something else that you planned on didn't work out and you're on the emergency management evacuation list, they will contact you when your area needs to be evacuated to find out if you need a ride. And they will do their best to get a vehicle to you and get you evacuated. Now, a couple of quotes for you. Steve Newton is the Chatham County Director of Emergency Management. He said this once, and I really liked it. You can avoid disaster by having preparedness at home. If the roads are blocked because of trees or whatever that may be, it's not an emergency for you because you're prepared. What this means is turn an emergency into just an inconvenience. Because if you're prepared, it's just going to be inconvenient that you can't get out. And one of my favorite people to quote is General George Patton. The man had a lot of very interesting quotes. A good plan today is better than a perfect plan tomorrow. And points of contact, if you want to contact the emergency management, you can contact Steve Newton at steve.newton@chathamnc.org. Or you can contact CERT if you're interested in volunteering or joining us, or just attending our monthly training sessions. You do not have to join to attend, and we can be reached at info@chathamcert.org. And if you do have access to a computer and would like to view this presentation, the last slide I have up here is resources. And this is just a bunch of websites that you can go to for all kinds of information, whether it be ham radio, training by FEMA, if you want to sign up for Skywarn classes. If you ever get a chance to attend Skywarn, I highly recommend it. Basic emergency preparations and that sort of thing. Now, the last thing I'd like to leave you with today is the story about a farmer and his hired hand. Now, a farmer, as they're wont to do, looking for a good farmhand. Well, he interviewed a bunch of boys, and one of them said that the reason he should be hired is because he could sleep well at night. The farmer didn't know what that meant, but it sounded interesting, and he hired the kid. Several weeks went by. He was happy with him, and then suddenly in the middle of the night, he gets an emergency phone call from a neighbor going, the weather's up. They could be a tornado. So the farmer gets dressed, runs out, tries to wake up the young man. He can't wake him up. So it's already starting to rain heavy. The farmer goes out. What do you know? The hay bales are already covered and tied down. He goes to the corral. All the gates are secured. He goes to the barn. Everything there is secured. And he suddenly thought back to when the young man said he could sleep through anything. It was because he was always prepared. He didn't have to worry because he knew that if something happened, he was always prepared. Every night, he prepared the same way. If a blow comes or rain comes, I got it all covered. And that's the way we need to be. Don't be a victim. Let something like a hurricane merely cause an inconvenience, not an emergency. And at that, I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Jackie. And any questions folks may have.
Thank you so much, Andy. That was a great presentation. It was very, very uplifting for a difficult conversation topic sometimes. So does anybody have any questions for Andy? I know that I was really impressed with the amount of information that came. So does anybody have any questions? Let me ask this. How many of you have a plan already in place for the upcoming hurricane season? Does anybody have a plan in place?
I put them all to sleep, Jackie.
No, you didn't. I know. No, because I think it was very interesting. I was very. Go ahead, Conway. I hear your voice out there.
And I need to know. I got some big trees near my house. Who do I need to get them cut down? Some people looks at them, they won't mess with them.
For something like that, if it's on private property, unfortunately, you're on your own for finding a contractor who will do that. I do know that if you have access to nextdoor.com or the Chatham chat list that Gene Gallen puts out, you can put that question out there and you'll get all kinds of referrals.
Really?
Yeah. Now, if the trees are in a position to threaten power lines or something, you can contact your local power company and they'll send somebody out to take a look at them. But other than that, if they're on private property, I really don't think that the county can help with that.
Yeah, the state said if a tree fall on the road where people can't get out, they would cut them off out of the road.
Yes, absolutely. If a tree is down across the road, contact the Emergency Management Center at its non-emergency number. I'm sorry, I don't have that in front of me. And they can contact the correct department to get somebody out there. Now, of course, if it comes down on a vehicle, dial 911 so that they can get some people out there to make sure everyone's okay and to block the roads to make sure nobody else gets hurt.
Mhm.
Okay, I am going to stop the
Okay, but
live stream for right now. Before I do that, I'd just like to say thank you, Andy, for being here and for communicating the information so clearly and so professionally. We appreciate it.